Hello everybody, it's Lion from LionBricks.com. Lots of people question whether or not it's safe to fully dismantle a LEGO minifigure. Today I'm going to tell you that it is, show you how to safely take apart all the sections of a minifigure safely without damaging the parts, and also show you a couple of techniques you can use to incorporate the parts into your own builds. So let's jump straight into it. I'm going to be using this minifigure as an example to show you how to take apart all of the sections of the minifigure. So let's start off with the head and the hair. You want to just pull these straight off. Try to avoid twisting it, as that could scratch or wear out the parts. Now you may be left in a situation where your minifigure head and hair are stuck together like this and you can't get the hair off. To solve this issue, place the minifigure head on the torso and then apply some pressure like this, because this applies more pressure on the head than the hair, so then you can just pull that straight off and of course take the head off separately. Let's move on to the arms and the hands. The hands are very simple. You just want to go ahead and pull these straight out like this. They are in there quite tight because you obviously don't want them to come out when you take utensils out of the hand. But yeah, pretty much you just want to pull them straight out, but make sure that you grip them like this and not like this, because if you grip like this it could bend the hand and put stress on that, which is something we want to avoid. So just pull it out like that and there you go. Now for the minifigure arms, this is one that a lot of people question whether or not it's safe. I can tell you it's very safe and it's designed to come out, but as long as you do it correctly. The correct way is to bring it up to chest height. That could be on the front or on the back. I find it much easier to do it on the front, and then you just want to pull it sideways like this, and you'll see there's actually a little slit on there, and that is designed to sort of compress as it goes in and out, and you want to use that as a guide to put it back in. So make sure you line that up horizontally and then you pretty much just roll it back on like this, and that's how you get the arms on and off. So let's take both of these off, and we're now left with the torso and the legs. The torso is very simple. You just want to pull that straight off. Try to avoid moving the legs around and jiggling it to try and get it off, because that will put stress on those delicate parts on the inside. Now the legs are definitely the hardest thing to take apart, just because they're really stuck on there. The technique you want to use is, instead of just pulling it straight off, you want to pull it off at a kind of angle like this, similar to how the arms had to come off to an angle. And the reason for that is the bar inside is actually angled a little bit. I reckon it's to do with how the machine puts the legs on. But yeah, you basically just want to wiggle it to get it started. As you can see, after a little bit of wiggling, it should start to create this little crack, and then you can just kind of pull it off. And as you saw there, I sort of pulled it off at an angle. It all happens very fast, but you just got to make sure you use the right technique. After a little bit more jiggling, I got the second leg off as well, and that leaves us with our hip or waist part, and that is the entire minifigure complete. So now I'm going to show you a couple of ways you can use these parts in your builds. First of all, we have the minifigure hair or helmet pieces. Now I'm going to go ahead and say straight away that I rarely see these used. They're usually only used for some obscure mock where it's, you know, a cool technique or a cool shape for that mock. The only time I've seen these parts used recurringly for multiple mocks will be using green hair pieces to create micro trees, and that's exactly what I've done here. As you can see, I used the Joker green hair piece to create this small tree. I just fitted it onto a green stud and one of these brown cones, and yeah, it creates a cool miniature tree. This is actually something that I really love, and if I was to make a micro layout, I'll definitely use this technique, but sadly there isn't many other techniques that I can think of to use hair and helmet pieces. Up next we have the minifigure head. Now obviously this is a much easier part to use, both because it's a much nicer shape and also it has a much better variety of ways to fit this to things, as it has a stud on top and obviously a fitting on the bottom. I've seen this used in many techniques such as pillars and walls, and of course, such as any part, it does have a few obscure uses that I've seen in mocks in the past as well. A technique that I recently discovered is using orange ones can act as really good baby pumpkins, which I think is a great technique to utilise during this time of the year, as we're now going into Halloween, and I feel like a lot of people will want to do this, including myself, which is why I got my hands on some of these orange heads. Up next we have the minifigure hand. Now I cannot stress just how useful this part is. I've used it in so many builds, and it's especially useful in small builds as it can act as a really good small detail. I've got two examples here of where I've recently used minifigure hands. The first one on the right is actually the deer that I made. As you can see, two of the antlers are made out of minifigure hands. And then the second example I have here is the wheelbarrow. As you can see, the feet of the wheelbarrow are actually made up of minifigure hands as well. There are a lot of ways you can use these. I've used them in trees in the past, and I've used them as stands for rifle guns. I mean, yeah, you can pretty much do whatever you want with these pieces, so get creative and try use them yourself. Next up we have the minifigure arm pieces. Now this is another one that I do not see used very often, and it's mostly just used for obscure techniques. My lobster build right here is a perfect example of an obscure technique. It just so happens to work out perfectly to make up the large arms of this lobster, and interestingly enough this also uses a lot of those hand pieces as well. Another reason I love the hand pieces, to go back onto that topic, is that they're in pretty much any colour, so you really can, along with the arms, pretty much incorporate these into any build you want colour wise. So yeah, there you go, that is the minifigure arm pieces. Let's take a look at the minifigure leg pieces. I feel like these are really underused. They have a great shape and they have a lot of fittings to them, so you should be able to incorporate these into a lot of mocks, but I think a lot of people just forget that they exist. As you can see in this mock, I used it to create this awesome cross window. The shapes that you're able to create with these legs are really impressive, and this one is really simple to build. You just place 2 legs on the bottom and then 2 legs on the top, but you actually fit those onto the sides of the walls, which is all thanks to one of those nice fittings that they have on the back. You can also use these leg pieces as a sort of wall detail like I've got in this example. I used this in a very old mock of mine and I never forgot it because I still love the shape it made. I used it in a kind of Japanesey oriental kind of build, which I think is very appropriate because I think it does have that shape. But yeah, definitely get creative with this. Very cool shapes you can make with it, and just have a go and see how you can incorporate this into your own build. Up next we have the minifigure waist or kind of hip part. Now I don't want to repeat myself, but this is another one that I rarely see used. I wanted to see what I could build with it and see what kind of shapes I could make with it, so I made this small little mock here, and I definitely came to the conclusion that if you can fit these onto the underside of bricks, you've got a very cool shape to play with. So although I've never seen this used, I can definitely picture myself using it. If I've got some kind of building and I want a trim underneath a roof or something, I think this could be a cool technique to use. I think if you did use this in a mock, a lot of people would look at it and go, what on earth is that? Because it's a very unrecognisable piece. So yeah, once again, have a go with that part. Finally, we've got the torso, and this is, yet again, another part that I've never seen used. Although I like to give out tips, I really don't think there is many tips for certain parts, just because they're not very usable. You know, this would be good if it didn't have that head fitting on top, but it is there, so you don't really see this used very often. It does have a cool shape. You could put this in a row for the top of a wall or something, but not every single part has to be very useful. However, every single part could be very useful. So once again, play around with this and let me know what you can create. But that is all of the techniques that I have to show off for all of the minifigure parts. That wraps up today's video. I hope that you enjoyed, but until next time, thanks for watching.